We're living together with Sean and his wife starting tomorrow. Living together. I glared fiercely at Peter. I haven't heard a single word about this. There's no need to say anything, is there? It wouldn't make any difference even if I did. Even if you object, living together is definite. I'm free to say it whenever I want. Peter was completely unrepentant. He must think there's nothing I can do now after the contract is done. That sounds incredibly selfish. Normally, wouldn't you at least discuss it? If I did that, you would just refuse, wouldn't you? Somehow you dislike Sean and Abby. Eventually, when the eldest son, Sean, and his wife arrived, they looked down on me as usual. And Abby said with a smug face, "If you resist, I won't take care of you." She seemed proud, but I wouldn't know what she might do to me if she were to take care of me. And the eldest son and his wife's misunderstandings continue. You're lucky, Mom. You met someone as kind as Dad. Otherwise, you might still be single. Huh? I am single though. Huh? The room went quiet after my unexpected remark. I am Diane Gale, 58 years old. I work as a nurse. It's tough, but fulfilling work. Given my age of 58, people often show concern, saying, "Isn't it tough? You must be tired." But I have something even more challenging and tiring than my job. That's taking care of my husband, Peter, who has retired. Peter is a stubborn old-fashioned man, never did any housework or childcare. Moreover, he has a bad mouth, so instead of being thanked for doing the chores, I get complaints every time. What's this meal? It's bland, bring me salt and pepper. He used to be kinder, and his stubbornness was part of his charm. But people change, and now I can only see myself as Peter's servant. If it were just that, I might have resigned myself to it. But what I regret most is how we raised our eldest son, Sean. I wanted him to grow up proud and kind. I scolded him when he did wrong and praised him when he did right, all with love. However, I wasn't the only parent. You're really hopeless. Peter would often deride Sean with a laugh. He seemed to think it was just a joke, but I was afraid of the impact it would have on a pure child. Please stop saying things that lower his self-esteem. He's still a child, and he might take it seriously. I asked Peter repeatedly. But he never took my opinion seriously, and each time, his sarcasm multiplied towards me. If he can't ignore that, he can't survive. I'm training him for life. You're too stiff.
Ah.
I should have married a more easygoing woman. Peter would say this even in front of Sean. When I blamed him, he would eventually say, "Enough. Divorce then, divorce, and storm off." Furthermore, Peter's infidelity came to light several times. And we faced the crisis of divorce many times. Yet, Sean was fond of his father. If Sean loved him, I couldn't take him away. So, I endured it. Eventually, I got used to Peter's abusive words. But now, I think, if I had firmly separated from him back then, Sean might have grown up better. Sean married at the age of 30. His partner, Abby, is the same age as him. They met through their mutual friend. Nice to meet you. I'd be happy if we could get along. Bright and cheerful Abby was very cute and likable. Likewise, I'm glad someone like you, Abby, is coming to our house. Initially, I thought we had established a good relationship. When she visited our house, she would run up with a smile and say, "Diane, please let me help." That changed about a year after Sean and Abby got married. Really? Abby is cute and easygoing. Sean found a good girl. One night when Sean and Abby were staying over, Peter was in high spirits, drinking alcohol. Right? She's always smiling, the best. She's not nagging like mom. Lets me do what I want and doesn't fuss. This is the price for not divorcing. Watching me be treated like a slave and looked down upon by Peter every day, Sean learned. Mother is someone to be demeaned. Mother is someone inferior to oneself. If only I had left Peter sooner. I still regret that now. Of course, I warned him, but words from someone he looked down on didn't resonate. Now that Sean is an adult, I've given up on admonishing him. I never thought it would cause even worse effects. That day, as usual, I sighed at their words while preparing dinner. Abby was nearby, wearing an apron. Could you take this over there? Sure. At times like this, Abby's cheerfulness was a relief. I cheered up and moved on to the next dish. Usually, Abby would return soon and ask, "What shall we do next?" But today, no matter how long I waited, she didn't come back. I wonder if something happened. Becoming a bit worried, I headed to the living room where Peter and the others were eating, timing it perfectly with the completion of the cooking. Abby was there, holding a glass and mingling with Peter and the others. Relieved, I placed the food I had brought on the table and sat down. Then, Abby said something shocking to me. "Oh no. Why are you sitting down, Diane? Aren't you still working?" What? I doubted my ears. Looking at her, Abby pressed on with a smile. "Because, look. You have to clear these dishes away. It's not the time to be sitting." Seeing my confused, stuttering reaction, Peter and Sean burst out laughing. "Nice. Abby, you're the best." "Really?" "Yay!" "Exactly. Mom has been overworking Abby too much. Housework is mom's job. Don't rely on my precious wife." I hadn't thought it could be this bad. Was it Peter's direction, or perhaps Abby's high adaptability? From that day, even Abby, my only solace, began to look down on me. Whenever Sean and Abby came to visit or stay over, I was naturally expected to do all the housework. While the three of them chatted, I was the only one bustling about. And I had to eat standing in the kitchen. Such had become the rule-like structure of our household. The frequency of visits by Sean and Abby to our house, where they were thoroughly pampered, increased more and more. They also began to demand money and dinners quite brazenly. It was clear they were completely reliant on me. Naturally, my burden grew. I had been at my limit even before, but I couldn't take it anymore. I decided to leave and get out of this house. On the day I made up my mind, Peter suddenly told me. I decided to buy a newly built detached house. What? He said the contract was already completed. What about the money? I paid the down payment with our savings and my retirement funds. The rest will be on a mortgage. It's a 4-room. I couldn't believe it. I was determined to leave. But I was stunned by what Peter said next. You've taken care of me a lot until now. This time, do as you like in the new house. What? Thanks to you, both Sean and I can do whatever we want. Thank you. I don't think such words can excuse what has been done to me. I cannot forgive him. But given Peter's usual behavior, these words of gratitude might be considered rare. Perhaps I was also swept away by their rarity. Indeed, the newly built house I visited later was beautiful and seemed easy to use. I thought about which home appliances would be easy for you to use. It was equipped with the latest home appliances. After being treated so poorly until now, I was truly happy. But on the moving day, when I saw a pile of boxes in the corner of the room, I stopped in my tracks. We hadn't yet brought in our stuff. So why were there unfamiliar boxes here? Peter? What are these? As I pointed to the pile of boxes and asked, Peter grinned with pleasure. Oh, those are Sean and his family's stuff. I moved them in yesterday. Sean's? As I echoed, Peter puffed out his chest proudly.
Yeah.
They've helped me out a lot. Convincing you was thanks to them. Peter then started to spill the beans. It turned out that the new house was initially purchased because the eldest son and his wife had begged for it. Anticipating that I would oppose it, Abby had suggested this. Let's keep the purchase a secret. Just thank Diane after buying it and you'll be fine. Also, stock up on convenient home appliances. She'll be happy then. Don't worry, don't worry. Diane is easy to manipulate. Everything was under Sean and Abby's control. What is that? As infuriating as that was, Peter loudly declared. We're living together with Sean and Abby starting tomorrow. Living together. I glared fiercely at Peter. I haven't heard a single word about this. There's no need to say anything, is there? It wouldn't make any difference even if I did. Even if you object, living together is definite. I'm free to say it whenever I want. Peter was completely unrepentant. He must think there's nothing I can do now after the contract is done. That sounds incredibly selfish. Normally, wouldn't you at least discuss it? If I did that, you would just refuse, wouldn't you? Somehow you dislike Sean and Abby. It's not that I dislike them. I'm just asking them to stop relying entirely on their parents now that they're over 30. Of course, it's fine for Peter. He doesn't manage the finances or do any housework. Being flattered by his eldest son and wife, he must feel good. Instead, all the burden and consequences fall on me. I can't even tell how much money and time has been taken from me. It may sound harsh, but I'm sorry, I can't cater to Sean and his wife any longer. That couple acts as if receiving benefits is a matter of course, without a single word of thanks. Instead, they look down on me and treat me like a slave. Rather than living with such people. I was about to bring something up when suddenly, Peter's smartphone rang loudly. Oh. It's from Sean. They're nearby. I'll go pick them up. You just keep cleaning up. What? That's just too arbitrary. If you have a complaint, then it's divorce. Before I could reply, Peter, repeating his usual phrase, left the house. Just as I thought. This is how it turned out. I muttered to myself, quickly got ready, and left the house too. After finishing my errands and returning home, Peter came back with Sean and his wife. How about that? Nice house, right? Peter spread his arms proudly. Following behind, Sean and Abby exclaimed in admiration. Wow. It's big. Nice, nice. Really? Wow. This room even has a bay window. So cute. You like it? Then let's make this room Abby's. Really? I'm so happy. The three of them were frolicking happily. It's as if I'm invisible to them. I don't mind being treated as heir, but I have something I need to tell them. Well, actually. As I started speaking with a sigh, Abby, noticing, giggled.
Ah.
Sorry, Diane, we totally excluded you. I just got so excited. Her smile seemed almost provocative, so I smiled back gently. No, I don't mind. So, you're going to live together too? I was surprised since I hadn't heard about it. Sean quickly stepped forward. Isn't it more reassuring than just dad and mom living alone? It's a duty to parents, isn't it? You're lucky to have such a good son and his wife. Like father, like son. Sean's posture, chest puffed out, was just like Peter's when he made the living together announcement earlier. A duty to parents. Huh? That means you no longer need the financial support you've been asking for, right? If we're living together, you'll save on rent too. Sean hurriedly shook his head. That's a different story. What are you talking about? But it's a duty, parents, right? You're not thinking that rolling in here all happy because of the new house counts as a duty to parents, are you? I feigned confusion, and Sean's face flushed red. That's enough for a duty to parents. Seriously, living with such a sarcastic mom? Abby, if she harasses you, tell me right away. Sean turned back to Abby, who nodded solemnly. It's okay. Diane and I will get along just like before. Right, Diane? Living together means caring for each other in our daily lives, right? Are you sure that's okay? Of course. Abby nodded energetically. It won't be like before, where I take care of all the household chores. You understand that, right? Take care of your own needs. Just that simple, yet Abby furrowed her brows, puzzled. Huh? You're not going to make us do household chores, are you? We both work, you know? You're a housewife, right? I work too. I leave at 8 a.m. and get back after 5 p.m. There's hardly any night shifts or overtime, but my working hours are nearly the same as theirs. As for the salary, mine is even better. When I explained this, Abby burst into laughter. Oh come on, Diane, you're just making excuses. But you're still the housewife of this house, right? Housework is a housewife's job. Oh, Abby, you're so rigid. I didn't realize you held such old-fashioned views. People these days handle household chores just fine. Abby's face turned sour. I'm just preserving old traditions. You should understand, given your age. Oh, if that's the case. Shouldn't the person who should be working the most in this house be you? Abby, the daughter-in-law? And if we're going by old standards, shouldn't we respect our elders? That's a contradiction. Abby, who had never expected me to retort, glared at me with a mix of surprise and humiliation. What? Just because you bought the house, you think you can act all high and mighty? You. She was almost shrieking. Where had her usual calm and soothing voice gone? Abby's face turned bright red as she screamed hysterically. Sean was desperately trying to calm her down next to her. And Peter also rushed over to defend his son and daughter-in-law. That's enough, Diane. How can you say such things to my precious daughter-in-law?
Yeah.
Mom. You went too far. Apologize to Abby. Apologize? I merely stated the facts. After treating me like an old lady, now they play the victim. Peter said in a low voice, pressuring me as I kept silent. Listen? We'll eventually need their care. Think of this as prepayment for the favors we'll owe them. Maybe it wouldn't hurt to serve them a bit until then. The son and his wife nodded in agreement. Rather than prepaying any favors, these two seemed more likely to repay kindness with spite. Even if I were to need care, I would never want these two to take care of me. Just the thought made me shudder. Seeing my reaction, Abby seemed to misunderstand something and said cheerfully, "If you resist, I won't take care of you." The idea of being cared for by her, not knowing what she might do, terrified me. I don't wish for that. Even though my words came from the heart, Abby laughed heartily. Oh, playing tough again. Exactly. She always has to be so stubborn. You lack charm, you know. Even if your housework is perfect. That doesn't make you a good wife. A daughter-in-law should be more like Abby. Oh, Peter. Good for them, they get along so well. I don't want to stay here another second. I turned to Peter to say what I had missed earlier. I need to talk to you. Oh. A confession of love? Sean joked. Lucky you, Mom. You met someone as kind as Dad. Otherwise, you might still be single. After being interrupted repeatedly and accumulating frustration from all their remarks, I finally snapped. Raising my voice, I retorted to Sean. Huh? I am single, though? Huh? The spacious living room fell silent. Then, trembling, Peter finally spoke. What are you talking about? I am, in fact, single. Oh. And so are you. That can't be. He seemed utterly baffled. Peter looked at me, confused. You always say it, don't you? Divorce, divorce. That was just a joke, well, a form of communication. I stated simply, but seeing his lack of understanding, I explained slowly, as if to a child. Just as you wished, we are divorced. That means we're both divorced now. From now on, we are strangers. Complete strangers who have nothing to do with each other. Understand? How can I understand that from such an explanation? I don't remember agreeing to a divorce. When did you file the divorce papers? Peter's eyes were bloodshot. He lives only by the emotions and impulses of the moment, forgetting what he signed and what he said at that time. You definitely wrote it with your own hand. No. I didn't. We've been getting along fine. There haven't been any issues for years. That's because I stopped expecting anything from Peter. The absence of conflict is because I gave up approaching him. He didn't even realize that. You did write it. 20 years ago, when your affair came to light. Peter frowned for a moment, deep in thought. Back then, I was seriously contemplating divorce. We argued every night after the children were asleep. With such intense memories, he should remember by now. But Peter's expression remained clouded. You don't remember, do you? Shut up. There's no way I can remember something that long ago. Besides, it's invalid. Something that old is definitely invalid. Peter was furious. I won't let it be invalidated. You know, Peter, not just 20 years ago, but even now, you're having an affair. I think that's a valid reason for divorce. Peter's face, which had been bright red, suddenly drained of color. In an instant, he turned pale blue and weakly fell to his knees. Sean, with a forced smile, intervened as if to throw a lifeline. Having an affair is definitely bad, but please forgive him. Mom was just lonely, right? It's because Dad doesn't talk enough. If he just communicated better, surely. Despite butting in, Sean started saying completely off-the-mark things. Not enough words? Lonely? There was a time right after we got married when that might have been true. But those feelings have long since disappeared. No, that's not it. It was just too much trouble to bother with a divorce. Lately, I've been getting used to his selfishness. If that's the case, rethink it. There's no need to go through with a divorce. Why now? The eldest son and his wife desperately tried to stop me. Of course, they would. If we continued to live in this house together, hellish days awaited. No more mother to push housework onto. No more all-accommodating environment. Even a beautiful new house isn't worth it if it comes with a stubborn, selfish father. It might actually be a negative. Moreover, by hinting at even caregiving, he was practically tightening his own noose. Mom? I'll make Dad apologize. Sean tried to lift Peter, who had collapsed, by his arm. But Peter was completely dazed, limp like an octopus. Cut it out. It's Dad's fault that Mom. That's right. It's all Father's fault. The son and his wife, quick to shift the blame to Peter. I wasn't intending to defend Peter, but their behavior was just too appalling, so I told the couple. The reason I reconsidered divorcing was because of you too. Huh? Did you think I enjoyed taking care of you? After being used and ridiculed so much, it was truly painful. Yet, Dad said he would live with you too, so I decided there was no other choice but to divorce. I filed the divorce papers just a little while ago. Hearing this, Peter abruptly looked up, his eyes teary. Why didn't you tell me? Was there a need to? It wouldn't have changed anything if I had. Even if I said I hated it, living together was absolute, right? You said that yourself. It seemed he remembered what he had just said. Peter lost his words. I'll ask a lawyer I know for the details. Sean and Abby tried to stop me as I left, but I brushed them off, find another slave. As I left through the front door, I could hear Peter, Sean, and Abby arguing. A fight between two self-centered people likely won't end. I was glad to have avoided getting involved. I quickly walked away from there. Later, I heard that Peter had cut ties with Sean and Abby. The house, though newly purchased, was put up for sale because Peter couldn't afford the payments on his income alone. Peter moved back to his parents' home, living with his nearly 90-year-old mother. The former mother-in-law, still quite vigorous. Shirley hadn't expected her son over 60 to return home. There's a part of me that feels sympathy. However, since my relationship with the former mother-in-law wasn't good, I felt a bit relieved. Sean and Abby decided to move into Abby's parents' home. I believe her parents are quite hands-off. So maybe this will encourage them to be a bit more independent. If they come begging to me, I have no intention of helping. The divorce has allowed me to live alone for the first time in a while. And I'm moved daily by the sheer relief of it. Not having to care for others is more liberating than I had imagined. Now, I even have the luxury to explore new hobbies. I should have divorced sooner. From now on, I'll try to tackle everything with a positive attitude, ensuring I have no regrets.
I stared at the plate of food in front of me, Derek's words still ringing in my ears. Wow, Lo, I didn't think it was possible, but your cooking gets worse every day. I sighed, setting down my fork. Is it really that bad? I asked, trying to keep the hurt from my voice. Derek scoffed, leaning back in his chair. Worse. I wouldn't even feed it to a stray dog. You can't cook, you can't clean, and you can't even give me a kid. What good are you? His words cut deep, piercing the fragile remnants of my self-esteem. I opened my mouth to respond, but his mother, Gwen, beat me to it. Now, Derek, she chided, though her tone held no real reproach. Don't be too hard on the girl. It's not her fault she's a failure in every sense of the word. I flinched, her insult stinging like a slap to the face. It wasn't the first time they'd belittled me, and I knew it wouldn't be the last. Living with Derek and his mother was a constant battle, a war of attrition against my very soul. As I cleared the table and set about washing the dishes, my mind drifted back to the countless times I'd tried to conceive, only to be met with disappointment and Derek's scathing remarks about my inadequacy. The words barren and useless echoed in my mind, taunting me with my perceived failures. Little did they know, I had recently discovered something that would change everything. While scrolling through social media forums, I came across a series of posts made by Derek himself, mocking my lack of culinary skills and expressing his desire for a divorce. He painted himself as the victim, a man trapped in a loveless marriage, seeking sympathy from strangers online. As I finished the dishes and retreated to the solace of my bedroom, I couldn't help but feel a sense of determination rising within me. For too long, I had allowed Derek and Gwen to diminish me, to strip away my sense of self-worth. But no more. It was time to take control of my life, to break free from the shackles of their cruelty. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to fight for my happiness, my dignity, and my future. This was just the beginning, the spark that would ignite a fire of change, burning away the chains that had bound me for far too long. The next morning, I awoke to the sound of Derek's voice, already berating me for some perceived failure. "Leela, where's my clean shirt? I have an important meeting today, and you couldn't even do one simple task." I hurried into the living room, bleary-eyed and still in my pajamas. "I'm sorry, Derek, I'll get your shirt ready right away." Gwen clicked her tongue disapprovingly. "Honestly, Lila, it's like you don't even try. No wonder my son is so disappointed in you." I bit my tongue, holding back the retort that threatened to spill forth. Instead, I scurried to the laundry room, grabbing Derek's freshly pressed shirt from the pile of clean clothes. As I handed it to him, he snatched it from my grasp, his expression one of disdain. "Took you long enough. At this rate, I'll be late for work." "I'm sorry," I mumbled, but he had already turned away, his attention focused on his phone. The rest of the day passed in a blur of monotony. I went to work, enduring the usual drudgery of my insurance job, only to return home and face the endless cycle of chores and criticism. Derek and Gwen seemed to take particular delight in pointing out my every flaw, no matter how insignificant. "Did you even bother cleaning the bathroom today?" Gwen sneered as I entered the kitchen to start dinner. "Of course I did," I responded, my voice weary. "Well, it doesn't look like it," Derek chimed in, his tone dripping with contempt. "But I guess I shouldn't be surprised. You're useless at everything else. Why would cleaning be any different?" I fought back tears as I turned my attention to the stove, determined not to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. Little did they know, their constant jabs were only fueling the fire burning within me, a fire that would soon consume their complacent cruelty. As the evening wore on, another source of tension emerged, Derek's gambling addiction. He had been losing money at an alarming rate, and the stress of his mounting debts was palpable. "You need to get your shit together," Gwen hissed, her voice low but venomous. "If you keep pissing away our money like this, we'll end up on the street." Derek slammed his fist on the table, his face flushed with anger. "Back off, Mother. It's none of your business how I spend my money." "It is when you're gambling away our future." Gwen shot back, her eyes blazing with fury. I watched the exchange unfold, a twisted sense of satisfaction creeping over me. Their dysfunction, their toxicity, it was all coming to a head, and I knew it was only a matter of time before the whole house of cards came crashing down. As I lay in bed that night, the weight of Derek's emotional and financial abuse pressing down on me, I made a decision. No more would I be the victim, the punching bag for their cruelty. It was time to take control, to exact my revenge and reclaim my life. The thought filled me with a sense of determination, a steely resolve that would carry me through the battles to come. Derek and Gwen had no idea what was in store for them, but they would soon learn the true cost of their actions. The breaking point came a few nights later, when Derek stormed into the house, reeking of alcohol and anger. "Where the hell is my dinner, woman?" he slurred, his words slurring together. I stepped out of the kitchen, wiping my hands on a towel. "It's almost ready, Derek. Just give me a few more minutes," he sneered, his eyes narrowing. "That's what you always say. Useless, just like everything else you do." Before I could respond, Gwen chimed in from the living room. "Don't talk to her like that, Derek. She's trying her best." "Her best?" he spat, rounding on his mother. "Her best is pathetic. I should have left this worthless sack years ago." Something inside me snapped at his words. Years of pent-up frustration, anger, and resentment came bubbling to the surface, and I couldn't hold it back any longer. "That's enough," I shouted, my voice trembling with fury. "I've had it with your constant abuse, your endless belittling. I'm not going to take it anymore." Derek's eyes widened, caught off guard by my sudden outburst. "What did you just say to me?" "You heard me," I continued, emboldened by my newfound courage. "I'm done being your punching bag, your emotional doormat. I deserve better than this, better than you." Gwen opened her mouth to interject, but I cut her off with a sharp glare. "And you're just as bad as he is, enabling his behavior, joining in on the insults. Well, no more." I turned back to Derek, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. "I'm leaving you, Derek. I'm filing for divorce, and I'm going to make sure you pay for every ounce of suffering you've put me through." For a moment, Derek was speechless, his mouth hanging open in disbelief. Then his expression twisted into one of rage. "You ungrateful bitch," he snarled, taking a step towards me. I stood my ground, unflinching. "Don't even think about it," I warned. my voice low and steady. "I'm not the same doormat you've been kicking around all these years." With that, I brushed past him, ignoring his sputtered threats and insults. I quickly packed a bag with some essentials and headed for the door, my heart pounding in my chest. As I stepped outside, I took a deep breath of the cool night air, a sense of freedom washing over me. I knew the road ahead would be long and difficult, but for the first time in years, I felt alive, invigorated by the prospect of reclaiming my life. I made my way to my brother Jason's house, knocking on the door with a newfound sense of purpose. When he opened it, his eyes widened at the sight of my disheveled appearance and the bag slung over my shoulder. "Lila, what's going on?" I steeled myself, pushing back the tears that threatened to spill forth. "It's over, Jason. I'm leaving Derek for good this time." Without hesitation, he ushered me inside, wrapping me in a comforting embrace. As I clung to him, the weight of years of abuse finally lifting from my shoulders, I knew that this was just the beginning of my journey towards reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my sense of self-worth. And Derek and Gwen, they would soon learn the true meaning of karma, the consequences of their actions rippling outward like a tidal wave, sweeping away the foundations of their smug superiority. After recounting the years of abuse I had endured at the hands of Derek and Gwen, Jason and his wife Emma were furious. Emma's eyes blazed with anger as she pulled me into a tight hug. "That bastard," she spat. "How dare he treat you like that? You don't deserve any of this, Lila." Jason nodded in agreement, his jaw clenched. "We're going to make him pay for what he's done. You have our full support, sis." I felt a wave of relief wash over me, grateful for their unwavering support. With their help, I knew I could finally break free from Derek's toxic grip. Over the next few days, we hatched a plan. First, I contacted a divorce lawyer to begin the legal process of separating from Derek. The lawyer assured me that with the evidence of his abuse and financial misdeeds, I had a strong case for securing alimony and a sizable settlement. Next, we turned our attention to building a solid case against Derek. Jason and Emma helped me gather documentation of his gambling debts, his online rants, and any other evidence we could find to expose his true nature. "We need to hit him where it hurts," Emma said, her voice steely with determination. "That money-grubbing prick needs to learn that there are consequences for his actions." It was then that I remembered Derek's estranged aunt, May. She had always been critical of his behavior, and she held the keys to the family inheritance. If we could get her on our side, it would be a devastating blow to Derek and Gwen. I reached out to May, explaining the situation and pleading for her help. At first, she was hesitant, but as I revealed the depth of Derek's cruelty and Gwen's complicity, her resolve hardened. "That boy has always been a disappointment," she fumed, "and to think his mother enabled such despicable behavior? It's unforgivable." With May on board, our plan began to take shape. She agreed to withhold the inheritance from Derek and Gwen unless they made amends for their actions, essentially leaving them financially destitute. As the preparations continued, I couldn't help but feel a sense of empowerment coursing through me. For years I had been the victim, cowering in fear and submission. But now the tables had turned, and it was my turn to dictate the terms of our engagement. Derek and Gwen had no idea what was coming, but they would soon learn the true price of their cruelty. With each step we took, I could feel the weight of their oppression lifting, replaced by a newfound strength and determination. This was more than just revenge, it was a reclamation of my dignity, a declaration that I would no longer be defined by their abuse. I was taking back control of my life, and nothing would stand in my way. As the plan solidified, I found myself growing more confident, more assertive. The old Lila, the meek and submissive doormat, was gone. In her place stood a woman emboldened, a warrior ready to fight for her rightful place in the world. And when the time came to confront Derek and Gwen, to unveil the truth and watch their carefully constructed facade crumble around them, I would savor every moment. They had sown the seeds of their own destruction, and I would be there to reap the bitter harvest, a testament to the power of resilience and the indomitable human spirit. A week after I left Derek, my phone rang. It was him, no doubt looking to smooth things over with empty promises and hollow apologies. I steeled myself before answering, determined not to let his manipulations sway me. "What do you want, Derek?" I asked, my voice firm. "Lila, listen," he began, his tone sickly sweet. "I think we've both said some things we didn't mean. Why don't you come back home, and we can work this out like adults?" I scoffed. "Work it out? You mean like how we've worked it out for the past few years, with you berating and belittling me at every turn?" "That's in the past," he insisted. "I've changed, I promise. Things will be different." I could practically hear the smugness dripping from his words, as if he expected me to come crawling back at the first sign of his supposed contrition. "Save it, Derek," I spat. "I'm not falling for your lies anymore. I want a divorce, and I'm not going to let you sweet-talk your way out of this." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and when he spoke again, his voice was laced with barely contained fury. "Listen here, you ungrateful little wench. You're going to sign those divorce papers, and you're going to do it without causing any trouble. You got that?" I smiled, unfazed by his empty threats. "Or what, Derek? You'll insult me some more? Throw a tantrum like a petulant child? I'm not afraid of you anymore." He sputtered, caught off guard by my newfound defiance. "You'll regret this, Lila. Mark my words, I'll make your life a living hell." "I doubt that," I replied coolly. "In fact, I think it's going to be the other way around. You and your mother are going to pay for every ounce of pain and humiliation you've put me through." With that, I ended the call, a sense of triumph surging through me. The old Derek, with his empty bravado and hollow threats, no longer held any power over me. Over the next few days, Jason, Emma, May, and I finalized our plan. We gathered all the evidence we could find, from financial records to social media posts, painting a damning picture of Derek's misdeeds and Gwen's complicity. As the day of our confrontation approached, I could feel the anticipation building within me. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the chance to strip away their false bravado and expose them for the cruel, vile people they truly were. We rehearsed the confrontation, going over every detail with meticulous care. I practiced my lines, my body language, determined to project an aura of confidence and strength that would leave no room for doubt. Finally, the day arrived. I took a deep breath, steeling my nerves as I approached the house I had once called home. Even from the outside, I could sense an uneasy cleanliness, as if Derek had already moved on and brought his mistress in before our separation was finalized. As I stepped inside, the stale air hit me like a slap in the face, a reminder of the oppressive atmosphere that had once permeated these walls. But now the tables had turned, and it was my turn to dictate the terms of our engagement. Derek and Gwen sat in the living room, their expressions a mix of surprise and contempt. Before they could utter a word, I launched into my prepared speech, laying out the evidence of their cruelty and financial misdeeds with surgical precision. As I spoke, I could see the color drain from their faces, the realization of their impending downfall slowly sinking in. Derek's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, utterly blindsided by the depth of our preparations. And then, just as I was about to deliver the final blow, the front door opened and May stepped inside, her steely gaze sweeping over the room. "Hello, nephew," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "It seems we have much to discuss." The look on Derek and Gwen's faces as May entered the room was priceless. Their smug arrogance melted away, replaced by a mixture of fear and disbelief. They knew, in that moment, that the game was up. "Aunt May," Derek stammered, attempting to regain his composure. "What are you doing here?" May fixed him with a withering glare. "Don't play dumb with me, boy. I'm here because of the shameful way you've treated this poor woman." She gestured towards me, her lips pressed into a thin line. Gwen, never one to back down, tried to interject. "Now, May, I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding. Derek and Lila are just going through a rough patch, that's all." "A rough patch?" May scoffed. "From what I've heard, this has been going on for years. Years of emotional abuse, financial manipulation, and outright cruelty." I watched as Derek's face contorted with rage, his fists clenching at his sides. "Who have you been talking to? Lila's been filling your head with lies, trying to turn you against me." "Enough of your lies, Derek," I spat, stepping forward. "I have all the proof I need right here." I brandished a thick folder stuffed with documentation of his misdeeds. Gwen's eyes widened as she caught sight of the folder, and her complexion paled. "Derek, what have you done?" Before he could respond, I launched into my prepared speech, laying out the evidence of his gambling addiction, his financial mismanagement, and his vile online rants about me. With each word, I could see the confidence draining from their faces, replaced by a growing sense of dread. And that's not all, I continued, my voice ringing out with newfound strength. I have witnesses, people who can attest to the years of abuse I've endured at your hands. As if on cue, Jason and Emma entered the room, their expressions steely and resolute. They stood beside me, a united front against the crumbling facade of Derek and Gwen's lies. Derek's gaze darted from me to Jason, then back again, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Gwen, for once, was rendered speechless, her usual bravado nowhere to be found. It was at that moment that the front door opened once more, and a young woman stepped inside. Her eyes widened as she took in the scene before her, clearly not expecting such a confrontation. "Blake?" Derek croaked, his voice barely above a whisper. The woman, Blake apparently, fixed him with a look of utter disgust. "You lied to me," she hissed. "You told me you were single, that you were ready for a committed relationship." Derek opened his mouth to respond, but May cut him off with a sharp wave of her hand. "Don't bother, Derek. Your web of deceit has unraveled, and we've all seen the truth." She turned to Blake, her expression softening slightly. "I'm sorry you got caught up in this mess, dear, but rest assured, my nephew and his mother will face the consequences of their actions." Blake nodded, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "I want nothing more to do with him," she spat, shooting Derek a venomous glare before storming out. The room fell silent, the weight of the confrontation hanging heavy in the air. Derek and Gwen sat frozen, their carefully constructed facade of lies and deception crumbling around them. And as I looked at their stunned faces, I couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication wash over me. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment when the scales of justice finally tipped in my favor. With a deep breath, I gathered my strength and delivered the final blow. "Derek, Gwen, your reign of terror is over. I'm suing for alimony and restitution, and I won't stop until you've paid for every ounce of suffering you've caused me." Their reactions were priceless, a mixture of disbelief, anger, and fear that left me savoring the sweet taste of revenge. They had sown the seeds of their own destruction, and now they would reap the bitter harvest. As I turned and walked out the door, Jason and Emma by my side, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The shackles of oppression had been broken, and I was finally free. Free to live my life on my own terms, to embrace the future with courage and determination. And as for Derek and Gwen, their day of reckoning was just beginning. The aftermath of the confrontation was like a whirlwind, with events unfolding at a dizzying pace. As Blake stormed out, her face twisted with rage and betrayal, Derek made one last-ditch effort to salvage his crumbling lies. "You can't seriously believe her," he sneered, gesturing towards me. "She's just trying to turn everyone against me, to take me for everything I've got." I fixed him with a steely glare, unfazed by his pathetic attempts at manipulation. "Save your breath, Derek. The jig is up and you know it." Jason stepped forward, his expression thunderous. "Don't even try it, man. We have more than enough evidence to bury you in court." "Evidence?" Gwen scoffed, her voice dripping with disdain. "What kind of evidence could you possibly have?" In response, I tossed the thick folder onto the coffee table, its contents spilling out in a cascade of damning documentation. Financial records, printouts of Derek's online rants, even photos and witness statements. It was all there, laid bare for them to see. Derek's face paled as he rifled through the papers, his hands trembling with barely contained fury. "Where did you get all this?" he demanded, his voice rising in pitch. "That's not important," May interjected, her tone stern. "What's important is that we now know the truth about your gambling addiction, your financial misdeeds, and your despicable treatment of Lila." Gwen opened her mouth to protest, but May silenced her with a withering glare. "Don't even try to defend him, Gwen. You're just as culpable in all this, enabling his behavior and joining in on the abuse." Derek's eyes darted around the room, searching for any shred of support or sympathy, but he found none, only the cold, hard reality of his lies and misdeeds laid bare before him. "You can't do this to me," he snarled, his fists clenched at his sides. "I'll fight this, every step of the way. You won't get a damn cent from me." I couldn't help but laugh at his empty bravado, his desperate attempts to cling to the illusion of power. "Oh, but we will, Derek. We'll take everything from you, just like you tried to take everything from me." Emma stepped forward, her expression one of steely determination. "We're not just going after you for alimony and restitution. We're going to make sure you face the full consequences of your actions, legally and financially." Derek's shoulders slumped, the fight draining from his body as the weight of our words sank in. He knew, in that moment, that he had lost. That his carefully constructed web of lies and deceit had finally unraveled, leaving him exposed and vulnerable. Gwen, ever the loyal enabler, tried one last time to defend her precious son. "This is outrageous," she spat. "You can't just come into our home and make these wild accusations." But May wasn't having it. She turned to her sister-in-law, her eyes blazing with a fury I had never seen before. "Enough, Gwen. Enough of your blind loyalty and willful ignorance. It ends here, today." With a heavy sigh, May reached into her purse and withdrew a thick envelope. "This is my last will and testament," she announced, her voice ringing out with finality. "And as of this moment, both you and Derek are hereby disinherited." The silence that followed was deafening, punctuated only by the sharp intake of breath from Derek and Gwen. Their faces, once so smug and arrogant, now twisted into masks of disbelief and horror. "You can't do that," Derek sputtered, his voice weak and hollow. But May simply shook her head, her expression unyielding. "I can, and I have. Consider it the price you must pay for your cruelty and deceit." And just like that, the final piece of the puzzle fell into place. Derek and Gwen, stripped of their ill-gotten wealth and inheritance, were left to face the harsh reality of their actions. Their world, once so carefully constructed on a foundation of lies and manipulation, had crumbled to dust. As I looked at their defeated faces, I couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph wash over me. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment when justice was finally served, when the scales were balanced in my favor. And as I turned and walked away, leaving Derek and Gwen to wallow in the wreckage of their own making, I knew that this was just the beginning. The future was mine to shape, to mold into something beautiful and fulfilling, a future free from the shackles of their oppression. The road ahead would be long, but for the first time in years, I felt truly alive, empowered by the knowledge that I had taken back control of my life. And as for Derek and Gwen, well, they would have plenty of time to reflect on the consequences of their actions, to learn the bitter lesson that karma has a way of evening the score. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of legal proceedings and emotional upheaval. True to my word, I pursued alimony and restitution from Derek with relentless determination, leaving no stone unturned in my quest for justice. With the mountains of evidence we had gathered, my lawyer made short work of Derek's feeble attempts at defense, his gambling debts, his online rants, and his emotional abuse. It was all laid bare for the court to see, painting a damning picture of his true character. Derek and Gwen, now disgraced and disinherited, could do little more than seethe in impotent rage as the legal system ground them down, stripping them of their ill-gotten wealth and privilege. With each court ruling in my favor, I could see the life draining from their eyes, the realization setting in that their reign of terror was truly at an end. And through it all, I stood tall and unwavering, bolstered by the support of Jason, Emma, and May. They were my rock, my foundation in the face of Derek and Gwen's increasingly desperate attempts to salvage their crumbling empire. "You'll regret this, Lila," Derek spat one day after a particularly devastating court ruling. "Mark my words, you'll never know peace as long as I'm breathing." I fixed him with a steely glare, his empty threats bouncing off me like water off a duck's back. "Save your breath, Derek. You've lost, and you know it. It's time you accepted the consequences of your actions." With those words, I turned and walked away, leaving him to stew in his own impotent rage. His threats were hollow, his power stripped away by the weight of his own misdeeds. As the legal battles raged on, I found myself slowly shedding the shackles of my past, the weight of Derek and Gwen's oppression lifting from my shoulders. With each victory, each hard-won settlement or ruling in my favor, I felt a renewed sense of strength and determination, a fire burning within me that could not be extinguished. And as the dust finally settled, the final judgments handed down, I found myself in a position I never could have imagined. Financially secure, emotionally liberated, and finally free from the chains of my toxic marriage. Derek and Gwen, on the other hand, were left destitute and disgraced, their once lofty status crumbling around them like a house of cards. May had seen to it that they were evicted from the family home, left to fend for themselves in the harsh reality they had so callously inflicted upon others. As I stood in my new apartment, surrounded by the trappings of my newfound independence, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and accomplishment wash over me. I had fought the good fight, weathered the storm of their cruelty, and emerged victorious, a testament to the indomitable human spirit and the power of resilience. In the months that followed, I threw myself into my career with renewed vigor, channeling my newfound confidence and determination into every aspect of my work. It wasn't long before my efforts were rewarded, and I found myself promoted to a senior position within the firm, a testament to my skills and dedication. But perhaps more importantly, I began to rediscover the parts of myself that had been suppressed for so long. My passions, my dreams, and my zest for life. I took up new hobbies, explored new interests, and surrounded myself with people who truly cared for me, who supported and uplifted me rather than tearing me down. And as for the prospect of a new relationship, well, I wasn't closing that door entirely. But this time I vowed to approach it with wisdom and discernment, never again allowing myself to be subjugated or diminished by another person's cruelty or insecurity. As I stood on the balcony of my apartment one evening, gazing out over the twinkling lights of the city, I couldn't help but marvel at the journey I had taken. From the depths of emotional and financial despair, I had risen like a phoenix from the ashes, stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. And in that moment, I made a silent vow, a vow to never again allow anyone to strip me of my dignity or self-worth. I was the master of my own destiny, the architect of my own future, and no one, not Derek, not Gwen, nor anyone else, could ever take that away from me again. With a deep breath and a smile on my face, I turned and went back inside, ready to embrace the next chapter of my life with open arms and an unwavering spirit. The past was behind me, and the future lay ahead, brimming with possibilities and the promise of a life truly lived on my own terms. Grace, you collapsed again? Unbelievable. Answer my calls, Grace. What kind of wife are you? Eric's voice blares through the phone, cutting through the ambulance sirens. I'm on my way to the hospital. I could lose the baby, I managed to say, holding back tears. The paramedics work around me, their faces focused and grim. Eric snorts on the other end. Well, we're here starving because you can't make dinner. Now you're relaxing in a hospital? Get it together. My throat tightens as I try to steady my breath. A paramedic looks at me with concern. You should focus on staying calm, ma'am. It's important for the baby. I nod, clenching my phone. Eric, I'm doing my best. This isn't about dinner. It's our child. His response is a heavy, frustrated sigh. Your best, huh? Seems like your best is just never enough. I hang up, unable to listen anymore. My heart pounds painfully in my chest, and not just from the physical strain. The paramedic shakes his head subtly. We'll be at the hospital soon. Just keep breathing. As I lie there, the thoughts of Eric's constant criticism and indifference replay in my mind like an old scratched record. Every harsh word echoes louder in the cold, confined space of the ambulance. Upon arrival at the hospital, I'm quickly wheeled into the maternity ward. Nurses move with practiced efficiency, and I catch snippets of diagnosis and concern. My OB-GYN, Dr. Collins, arrives shortly after. Grace, hang in there, she says with a calm yet urgent tone. We're going to do everything we can to make sure both you and the baby are okay. I nod, feeling a tear slip down my cheek. Thank you, Dr. Collins. Hours pass, marked by the beeping of monitors and the quiet hum of hospital activity. It feels surreal, a stark contrast to the chaos of my home life. Dr. Collins updates me regularly, her calm demeanor a lifeline amidst the storm within me. Eventually, the tension eases. The baby is stable for now, she says, offering a reassuring smile. But you need to avoid stress. It's crucial. I nod weakly, knowing how impossible that request feels with Eric at home. I'll try, Doctor. The room grows silent once Dr. Collins leaves, except for the soft ticking of a nearby clock. I stare at it, counting the seconds, trying to slow my racing thoughts. I need to find a way out of this. My phone buzzes again, breaking the brief peace. It's a message from Eric. Don't expect me to come. Sort yourself out. I toss the phone aside, feeling a surge of something I haven't in weeks. Anger. What kind of person can't even show up when their wife is in the hospital, risking everything for their unborn child? That anger simmers, providing a strange comfort. Maybe it's time I started thinking about what I need, what the baby needs. Not just what Eric wants. This realization hits me like a wave, both terrifying and liberating. The door creaks open, and a nurse enters with a tray of food. Time to eat, Grace. You need your strength. I look at her, nodding. I'm not sure what my next steps will be, but one thing is clear. I need to get stronger. Strong enough to stand up for myself and my baby. Strong enough to face whatever comes next, even if that means facing Eric. I take the first bite, letting the warmth of the food seep into my bones. It's a small step, a simple action, but it feels like the beginning of something bigger, something necessary. For now, I focus on eating and breathing. The fight can wait until tomorrow. The fluorescent lights flickered above me, mimicking the flicker of emotions I felt inside. Leaning against the stark white hospital sheets, I closed my eyes, recalling a time when life seemed simpler. 2 years ago, I was one of the top marketing executives at my firm. I thrived on the rush of meetings, pitches, and late-night brainstorms. It was during one of these hectic days when I first met Eric. He wasn't always this way. Back then, he was charming and attentive, surprising me with coffee during those long nights, showering me with thoughtful gifts, and making me laugh. The memory felt distant now, almost like a dream. Losing myself in work, I hadn't seen the warning signs when our whirlwind romance led to a rushed marriage. Within a year, I was pregnant, and it became clear that my role would need to change. Eric gently suggested that I become a stay-at-home wife. It's only until the baby arrives, he assured me, his arm around my shoulder. I agreed, believing him, and at the same time, believing in us. But as the months passed, the dynamic shifted. Eric's patience grew thinner, and his demands became relentless. This once affectionate man turned into someone colder, more critical with each passing day. Nurse, I called, needing a voice to break my chain of thoughts. Can I get some water? My voice sounded weaker than I expected. Of course, Mrs. Green, the nurse responded, smiling kindly. Thank you, I murmured. As simple as the gesture was, it reminded me of basic decency, something Eric's behavior often lacked now. The nurse returned with a cup and placed it on the side table. Try to rest, Mrs. Green. Stress isn't good for either of you. I nodded. Please call me Grace. All right, Grace, she said softly before stepping out. Her kindness was a balm, a stark contrast to what I faced daily. Eric's dismissive attitude wasn't confined to stressful moments. A week ago during a family dinner, his mother, Cheryl, pierced into me with her icy gaze. Grace, this casserole is too salty. And don't you think you should have a better grip on household chores by now? Before I could respond, Eric added, Mom's right, Grace. For someone staying at home, you should be more proficient with these things by now. I had smiled tightly, swallowing the retort burning at the back of my throat. I'm doing the best I can, Cheryl. Well, your best needs to improve, she shot back, her eyes never leaving mine. That night, as I cleaned the dishes alone, I asked Eric why he never defended me. They're my parents, Grace. I can't just argue with them over simple things. You need to handle it better. Handle it better. His words rang in my ears as I drank the water, thinking about how far I'd fallen from that confident executive to someone who now questioned her every move. But in this sterile hospital room, something new was budding. A resolve. Dr. Collins's words about stress and the nurse's simple kindness reminded me of a life beyond Eric's control. There was a world where I could be strong again, not just for me but for my child. I knew what needed to be done. Becoming that strong, independent woman again wouldn't be easy, but this collapsing, bending, and breaking needed to end, for my baby and for myself. A knock on the door interrupted my thoughts. It was Dr. Collins, holding a clipboard. Grace, can we talk? She asked gently. I nodded, steeling myself. Of course, Dr. Collins. What do I need to know? It's about balancing your health and any external stress, she began, and I knew this was just the start of a conversation about taking back control. Dark times lay ahead with Eric, but with each moment in that hospital, I found my determination strengthening. It wasn't just about staying healthy. It was about reclaiming my life, one day at a time. The sunlight streamed through the windows as I sat propped up in my hospital bed, sorting through the cascading thoughts in my mind. Just as I was about to sip some water, my phone buzzed. Cheryl's name popped on the screen, making my heart pound faster. "Grace, you've been in that hospital long enough. You need to come home and take care of your duties," she began without preamble. "I'm not just lying here out of choice," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need to stay here for the baby's health." "Excuses," she scoffed. "You are a useless wife to my son, and it's high time you step up. We want dinner ready when Eric gets home." The line went dead, leaving me trembling with anger. I had just endured a terrifying health scare, yet all they could think about was dinner. Suddenly, the hospital door swung open, and Eric stormed in. "Grace, what's with you ignoring Mother's calls?" His face twisted with irritation. "I was resting," I said, gripping the bed rails for support. "The doctor said I need to avoid stress." "You're stressed. What about me, Grace? I'm the one working all day to support us." "You think I don't work?" I shot back, surprising myself with the sharpness of my tone. "I just expect." Eric began, but he stopped mid-sentence as Cheryl swept into the room, her face a mask of cold fury. "Really, Grace? Making excuses to avoid your responsibilities?" She turned to Eric. "Your father and I never had these issues. We raised you with discipline, not laziness." I clenched my fists. "I'm doing the best I can, Cheryl. I'm carrying your grandchild, remember?" Cheryl snorted. "Carrying a child is no excuse. Women have been doing it forever without causing such a scene." Eric looked at me, his eyes void of any sympathy. "Mom's right. You need to pull yourself together." This was the family dynamic I suffered through daily, unyielding and often merciless. But today it felt different. Something inside me shifted. These people, all their criticisms and commands, they no longer had the power they once wielded over me. "You're right. I do need to pull myself together," I said, my voice firm. "For myself and this baby. Because this situation," I gestured around the sterile room, "is not working." Eric and Cheryl both stared at me, stunned. "Grace, don't make things harder on yourself," Cheryl warned, her voice dripping with disdain. "Harder on myself?" I laughed bitterly. "I'm barely surviving this as it is." Cheryl turned to Eric. "See, this is what you get for marrying someone so weak." "That's enough, Cheryl." The words came out harsher than I intended, but I didn't care anymore. "You've both said your piece. Now, leave me alone." Eric's eyes narrowed. "Don't push it, Grace." I met his gaze and didn't flinch. "Get out, Eric. I need rest, and you're not helping." They finally walked out, leaving me in the suffocating silence of the room. The door clicked shut, and for the first time, I exhaled a breath I didn't know I was holding. The realization washed over me. I couldn't continue like this. This wasn't living. I knew I needed an exit strategy. My mind flashed back to a happier time when I had friends and allies, people who cared. Maybe, just maybe, there was someone who could help pull me out from this abyss. It was time to reach out, to find the strength I'd buried for so long. The nurse shifted the curtains, letting in the morning light. I sat up, adjusting the pillows behind me. My body ached, but determination filled my veins. I needed a way out, and every second brought me closer to reaching out for help. The door cracked open. I expected another nurse, but in walked a blast from my past, Ally. Her hair was shorter now, and she looked more confident than ever, but those piercing blue eyes were unmistakable. "Grace?" she asked, her face a mixture of surprise and concern. I blinked, feeling a rush of emotions. "Ally, what are you doing here?" She came closer, grabbing a chair and sitting by the bedside. "I was visiting a business associate, and I saw your name on the board. What happened?" I took a deep breath. "Well, it's a long story. Basically years of stress and, well, Eric." Her smile vanished. "Eric? Your husband?" "Yes," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I've tried for so long to make it work, but it's been a nightmare. His emotional abuse, his family, I'm barely holding on." Ally leaned back in her chair, assessing me. "That doesn't sound like the Grace I knew. The Grace I knew was a powerhouse." My eyes welled up with tears. "I don't feel like a powerhouse anymore." "Well," she said firmly, "it's never too late to change that. How serious is your health?" "The baby's stable for now," I explained, "but I need to avoid stress." "And Eric's not making that easy, is he?" she asked, already knowing the answer. "No, he isn't." Ally nodded thoughtfully. Grace, what if I told you that you don't have to go back to that life? I can help you start over. Her words felt like a lifeline. What do you mean? I have an apartment downtown, Ally said. It's empty and you can stay there rent-free. It's a fresh start. My mind raced. Wouldn't it be too much trouble? Not at all, Ally assured me. You focus on your health and the baby. We can take it from there. The relief was overwhelming, but realistic worries clouded my mind. Eric would never let me go easily. What about Eric? Ally's face turned serious. We'll deal with him. For now, you need to get better. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through her contacts. I know someone who specializes in family law. He can help you with whatever you need to do next. Each word she spoke felt like another piece of armor being placed around me. For the first time in months, I felt something akin to hope. Why are you doing this for me, Ally? We've been through a lot, Grace, she replied. You've always been there for me. Now it's my turn to help you. And I can't stand seeing you like this. Her offer was more than just a place to stay. It was a chance to rebuild my life. Thank you, Ally. I don't know what to say. Just say you'll take care of yourself, she said, squeezing my hand. And if you need anything, anything at all, you call me. The conversation with Ally left me with a renewed sense of purpose. As she left to make a few calls, I leaned back against the pillows. I couldn't change the past, but maybe, just maybe, I could shape a better future. I had much to think about, but one thing was clear. I wasn't alone in this fight anymore. I had Ally, and with her support, I might just find a way to reclaim my life and protect my baby. A few days after being discharged from the hospital, I found myself in Ally's downtown apartment. It was small but warm and cozy, a world apart from the cold, tension-filled atmosphere of my home with Eric. I settled into the couch, feeling a strange combination of relief and anxiety. Ally bustled around, unpacking groceries she had brought. You need to rest, Grace. Let me handle this. Thank you. I don't know what I'd do without you, I said sincerely. You'll do just fine, she replied with a reassuring smile. We need to talk, though, about the plan. The seriousness in her tone made my heart beat faster. What do we need to do? Ally handed me a slip of paper. This is the contact information for a great family lawyer I know. His name is Mark Jensen. He's got a reputation for handling messy divorces. I took the paper, feeling its weight. This was a significant step. When should I call him? Ally looked at me, her eyes fierce. The sooner, the better. Eric isn't going to let you go easily. You need legal protection. I nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. You're right. I'll call him tomorrow. The next day, as planned, I dialed the number on the paper. Mark's assistant answered, and soon I was connected to the lawyer himself. Grace, I've been briefed by Ally about your situation, Mark said, his voice calm and professional. I want you to know that you have options. I don't want a drawn-out fight, I stammered, fear creeping into my voice. Understandable, he replied, but we need to ensure you and your baby are safe. Document everything, every threat, every act of aggression. I shivered, the memories flooding back. Okay, I'll do that. We'll also file for a restraining order if necessary, Mark continued, and I'll guide you through the divorce process. You're not alone, Grace. After hanging up, I felt a tiny spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, things could get better. Days turned into weeks, and I slowly settled into a semblance of a new routine. Ally visited often, and her daughter Hannah dropped by with thoughtful gifts for the baby. One evening, I decided to open up to Hannah about Eric. Eric's not who you think he is, I began cautiously. Hannah frowned, her eyes narrowing. What do you mean? I took a deep breath. He's been emotionally abusive. His family, too. I can't live like that anymore. Hannah's face hardened. I work with him, you know. He's not exactly kind there either, but I never knew it was this bad. I nodded, feeling a bond forming. I'm glad you know now. Hannah's eyes flashed with determination. I can keep an eye on him, let you know if he's planning anything. Thank you. That would mean a lot, I said, feeling a surge of gratitude. Over time, Hannah's updates about Eric became a crucial part of my strategy. She reported his growing frustration at work, his dismissive attitude towards colleagues, and the whispers of a possible demotion due to his behavior. Each piece of information was another brick in the wall I was building to protect myself. One afternoon, I received a call from Mark. Grace, I filed the initial divorce papers. Eric will be served soon. Be prepared for his reaction. My heart pounded. What should I expect? He'll likely be angry, but remember, you're doing this for your safety and your baby's future. Stay strong, Mark counseled. Ally arrived shortly after, sitting beside me on the couch. Whatever happens next, you have support. We're in this together. I squeezed her hand, feeling the truth in her words. The battle was far from over, but I was no longer the same scared woman in the hospital. I was stronger now, surrounded by people who believed in me. As I held my growing belly, I whispered, "We're going to be okay. We have to be." In that moment, I knew I had already made the most pivotal move towards reclaiming my life. The road ahead was daunting, but I was ready to face it, step by cautious step, surrounded by newfound allies and an unyielding resolve. I was at my weekly checkup at the hospital, waiting for Dr. Collins when the door burst open. Eric stormed in, his eyes wild and angry. He hadn't made contact since the divorce papers were served. I had hoped he'd stay away, but deep down I knew better. "What the hell do you think you're doing, Grace?" he barked, marching up to the examination chair, his face inches from mine. "You think you can just walk out and take my child with you?" My heart pounded in my chest. "Eric, please, calm down. This is a hospital." "Calm down?" he shouted, his voice echoing in the small room. "You're trying to ruin my life." Before I could respond, Dr. Collins entered, eyes wide. "Excuse me, sir. You can't barge in here like this." Eric turned on her, finger pointing. "This is between me and my wife." I stood up, facing him. "No, Eric, it's about me and my baby, and you need to leave." His eyes narrowed, his face contorting with rage. "You think you can do this? You think you can just leave me and everything will be fine?" Suddenly, the door swung open again. Hannah stepped in, glaring at Eric. "Back off, Eric." "What the hell are you doing here?" Eric spat, his anger shifting to her. Hannah crossed her arms. "Protecting Grace. If you don't leave right now, I'll call the police." Eric's face turned red with fury. "You're just as deluded as she is. This was a mistake from the start." "Eric, get out," I said, my voice quivering but firm. "I've hired a lawyer. We're getting a divorce." He looked at me, stunned for a moment, then laughed bitterly. "You'll come crawling back once this fantasy of yours crumbles." Hannah stepped closer to Eric, her voice dangerously low. "Get out, now!" Eric finally seemed to grasp the seriousness of the situation. He glanced between us, his teeth clenched in anger. "You'll regret this, Grace." As he stormed out, slamming the door behind him, I sank back into the chair, shaking. Hannah sat beside me, placing a comforting hand on my arm. "You did the right thing, Grace." Dr. Collins nodded, her face a mask of concern. "Do you want me to call security? Make sure he doesn't come back?" I shook my head, trying to steady my breath. "No, it's okay. He's gone for now." Hannah looked at me, her eyes soft with sympathy. "Are you all right?" I managed a nod. "I think so. Thank you, Hannah." "We're in this together, remember?" she said, squeezing my hand. Dr. Collins finished the checkup, assuring me that the baby was fine. But the encounter with Eric left a lingering tension in the air. As Hannah and I left the hospital, she turned to me. "Now's the time to stand firm. Don't let him intimidate you." "I know," I said, my voice more confident than I felt. "I can't go back. Not now." Hannah smiled, a fierce glint in her eyes. "And you won't. We'll make sure of it." As we got into the car, a new determination settled over me. Eric's reaction didn't surprise me, but it did remind me of just how far I'd come and how much farther I still had to go. The road ahead was uncertain, but I wasn't walking it alone. With Hannah, Ally, and the support of my new allies, I felt a flicker of hope. The fight for my freedom had only just begun, but with every step, I grew stronger, more resolved. I was ready to face whatever came next, knowing that this time, I had the strength and support to stand my ground. It had been a week since Eric's outburst at the hospital, and I had finally started to feel a semblance of peace in Ally's apartment. My morning was quiet until my phone buzzed with a call from Allie. "Grace, turn on the local news," she said, her voice urgent. I fumbled for the remote, switching on the TV just in time to see Eric's face plastered on the screen. Local businessman Eric Green faces allegations of workplace harassment and creating a hostile environment. Reliable sources indicate a demotion is imminent, the reporter explained. My heart raced. I could hardly believe what I was hearing, but a sense of vindication washed over me. Ally's voice interrupted my thoughts. "You see that? He's getting what he deserves." "How did this happen?" I asked, still in shock. Hannah, she gathered evidence, reported it, She knew the right people to make sure it didn't get swept under the rug, Ally explained. Just as I hung up, Hannah walked through the door, a look of triumph on her face. Saw the news? I did. I don't know how to thank you, I said, voice thick with emotion. Don't thank me yet. Eric's not going down without a fight, Hannah replied, her face turning serious. We sat on the couch, the TV now muted. I've arranged for extra security at your building. Until the restraining order is finalized, we can't be too careful, she said. The thought of Eric trying to retaliate sent shivers down my spine. Do you really think he'll try something? Hannah nodded. I wouldn't put it past him. But you're not alone. We've got your back. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the situation, but also the strength of my support system. I'm ready for whatever comes. Hannah's phone buzzed, and she glanced at it, frowning. It's him. He's been calling, leaving threats. I grabbed her wrist. What kind of threats? She looked at me, eyes filled with concern. Saying he'll make sure you regret leaving him. He's desperate, Grace. I closed my eyes, anger replacing my fear. Let him try. I'm done being scared of him. The next few days were tense. Everywhere I went, I felt the shadow of Eric lurking, but I refused to let it control me. Ally and Hannah were relentless in their support, staying close and checking in frequently. One evening, Mark called, his tone somber. Grace, we need to talk. Eric's lawyer reached out. He's going to fight the divorce hard, especially for custody. Of course he would. What do? We prepare, gather all evidence of his abuse, his threats. We build your case solid, Mark advised. I nodded, the determination in his voice bolstering my resolve. I'll do whatever it takes. Weeks turned into a blur of preparations and cautious living. Eric's demotion became official, and rumors swirled about his troubles at the workplace. Hannah's intel kept me informed, making sure I stayed a step ahead. Finally, the day came for the divorce hearing. Standing outside the courtroom, my heart pounded. Ally held my hand, her presence a steadying force. You've got this, Grace. Show them the strong woman you are, she whispered. As we walked into the courtroom, Eric's glare bore into me. He looked disheveled, his arrogant demeanor now marred by desperation. I stood tall, ready to face him. The proceedings were arduous, but Mark was relentless, presenting every piece of evidence we had meticulously collected. Eric's lawyer tried to paint me as unstable and unfit, but the truth was undeniable. At the end of it all, the judge ruled in my favor. Eric's abusive behavior, his threats, the hostile work environment, all weighed too heavily against him. As I walked out, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Eric's defeat was a victory not just for me, but for my unborn child. I had fought, and I had won. But most importantly, I had reclaimed my life, ready to start anew. The day I left the courthouse felt surreal. The fight was over, and I had won. And yet the future felt like an unknown expanse, stretching out before me. I returned to Ally's apartment, my temporary sanctuary, feeling both relieved and uncertain. A few weeks later, I was sitting in Ally's office, now officially part of her team. I was grateful for the job and the chance to rebuild my life. It felt good to use my skills again and to be surrounded by supportive faces. Ally walked in, holding a tiny blue onesie. For the little guy, she said, handing it to me. I smiled, running my fingers over the soft fabric. Thank you, Ally. You've done so much for us. Your family, Grace. And speaking of family, she hesitated, then continued, I want you to meet someone. She led me to a conference room where a man in his mid-40s sat. He smiled warmly as we entered. Grace, this is John. John, this is Grace. John stood up, extending a hand. Nice to meet you, Grace. Ally's told me a lot about you. Nice to meet you too, I said, shaking his hand, feeling a bit curious. John is a therapist, Ally explained. I thought it might help to talk. I nodded, feeling a bit overwhelmed but understanding her intention. Thanks, Ally. I'll consider it. As I walked back to my apartment that evening, I felt a mixture of gratitude and doubt. Could I really put all this behind me? Months passed, and my life began to stabilize. I worked hard, focusing on my pregnancy and my new job. Hannah stayed close, her friendship becoming a beacon of light in my chaotic world. One afternoon, Ally called me into her office. Grace, I have an offer for you. What is it? I asked, curious. She handed me a folder, an opportunity to lead a new project, something I think you'll excel in. I opened the folder and scanned the details. It was a challenging project, but also a chance to prove myself once more. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Ally smiled. You deserve this. All right, I said, feeling a surge of excitement. Yes. As I left her office, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Hannah. Can you meet me at the park? I have news. I hurried over, finding her sitting on a bench, looking excited. What's up? She grinned. Eric got fired today. They finally had enough of his behavior. A flood of emotions swirled inside me, but mostly relief. Wow. I don't even know what to say. Hannah laughed. Just breathe, Grace. Karma's doing its job. We spent the rest of the afternoon talking and laughing, a sense of closure settling over me. That night, as I lay in bed, feeling my baby's kicks, I finally felt at peace. Eric was out of my life, and a new chapter was beginning. I whispered, "We're going to be okay, little one." The months rolled by, and soon it was time. I went into labor late one night, and Ally rushed me to the hospital. The delivery was intense, but the moment I held my son in my arms, everything else faded away. "You did it," Ally whispered, tears in her eyes. "No, we did it," I corrected, feeling the weight of our journey. As I cradled my son, I realized that the darkest moments of my life had led me to this point. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving, surrounded by people who loved and believed in me. In the following days, I took up Ally on her suggestion to meet John for therapy. It helped me to process everything I'd been through and to rebuild my confidence. When I returned to work, Ally officially offered me the role of project lead. I accepted, feeling ready to take on the world. And so, surrounded by a new family of friends and allies, I stepped into my new life with determination and a hopeful heart. My son and I were ready for whatever came next, knowing we had already overcome the hardest battles. We were ready to face the future together.
My name is Jane, and this is the story of how I took control of my life and reclaimed my self-worth after my husband, Derek, betrayed me. I am a 35-year-old lawyer in Boston, and for the longest time, I thought I had the perfect life. I was married to Derek, a successful 38-year-old owner of a textile company. We had a beautiful home, and from the outside, everything seemed perfect. But things started to change. Derek, once attentive and loving, began to withdraw. He spent more time at work, frequently took business trips, and was often preoccupied. At first, I attributed it to the pressures of running a business, but soon, I started to notice other signs. Derek began to criticize me more often, particularly about my appearance and my career. Despite being a prominent lawyer, he belittled my success because I didn't earn as much as he did. The turning point came one evening when Derek was on yet another business trip. I was feeling lonely and decided to use his old laptop, which he rarely used. That's when I stumbled upon a secret Instagram account. My heart pounded as I scrolled through the messages and photos. It was clear that Derek was having an affair with a woman named Jessica, a beautiful young woman in her mid-20s. The next day, when Derek returned, I confronted him. "Derek, are you cheating on me?" I asked, my voice trembling with both anger and sadness. "I have proof," I added, holding up the laptop. Derek didn't even flinch. Instead, he looked at me with cold eyes and said, "Jane, you're just not interesting anymore. You're always busy with your pointless cases, and frankly, you're not a supermodel. I need someone who can keep up with me and make me feel alive." His words cut me deeply. I had always supported him, stood by him through thick and thin, and this was how he repaid me. I couldn't believe the man I had loved for over a decade was capable of such cruelty. But instead of breaking down, I decided to fight back. I remembered the prenuptial agreement we had signed. It clearly stated that if Derek cheated, I was entitled to half of his business. It was a detail he had likely forgotten or hoped I wouldn't remember. I moved out of our house and returned to my childhood home, which was in my name. It was a small comfort in the midst of my turmoil. I immediately started preparing for the legal battle ahead. Derek, however, was not done with his deceit. He tried to manipulate me, suggesting that we could work things out, but I knew better. His only goal was to drag out the divorce and make me give up my rightful share of his business. I arranged a meeting with Liam, Derek's lawyer. Liam and I had crossed paths professionally a few times, and I knew he didn't anticipate facing me in this situation. When I presented him with the evidence of Derek's affair and the prenuptial agreement, he was visibly shocked. It was clear that Derek had not been entirely honest with him. "Liam, I have all the proof I need," I said calmly, handing over the documents and photos. "Derek cheated on me, and as per the prenup, I'm entitled to half of his business." Liam studied the documents, his hands trembling slightly. "Jane, I had no idea," he stammered. "Derek never mentioned any of this." "Well, now you know," I replied. "And you can tell Derek that I'm not backing down. I will get what I deserve." Derek was furious when he learned about my meeting with Liam. He called me, his voice filled with anger. "What did you say to my lawyer, Jane? Why are you doing this?" "Because you betrayed me, Derek," I responded, my voice steady. "And I won't let you get away with it." Over the next few weeks, Derek tried every trick in the book to intimidate and manipulate me, but I stood firm. I hired a lawyer from my firm to represent me, ensuring minimal interaction with Derek. The prenuptial agreement made the process straightforward, and with ample evidence of his infidelity, I was confident that I would secure my share of his business. Despite Derek's attempts to make me give up, I remained resolute. I was determined to reclaim my self-worth and build a better future for myself. This was just the beginning of my journey, and I knew there would be more challenges ahead, but I was ready to face them head-on. After the initial shock and pain, I knew I had to be strong and strategic. I couldn't let Derek's betrayal define me. Returning to my childhood home was both comforting and empowering. It was a place filled with memories of simpler times, and it gave me the strength I needed to move forward. As I settled into my new routine, I focused on gathering all the necessary documents and evidence for the divorce. My legal mind was sharp, and I was meticulous in my preparations. I had no intention of allowing Derek to manipulate the situation any further. Meanwhile, Derek continued his attempts to intimidate me. He sent me a series of messages, alternating between anger and pleading. He couldn't fathom that I was serious about taking half of his textile company. He had always underestimated me, and now he was paying the price. One evening, as I was organizing my documents, I received a call from Derek. "Jane, we need to talk," he said, trying to sound calm but failing to mask the desperation in his voice. "Derek, there's nothing left to talk about," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "We're going through with the divorce, and you know why. Please, Jane, can't we just settle this without all the legal drama?" he pleaded. "Think about our years together." I took a deep breath, feeling a mixture of sadness and resolve. "Derek, you made your choice when you cheated on me. Now, I'm making mine. I won't back down." The next day, I had another meeting with Liam. This time, he seemed more prepared, but I could see the tension in his eyes. We met at a cafe, and as we sat down, I noticed he was more cautious with his words. "Jane, I understand your position," Liam began, trying to maintain a professional tone. "But is there any way we can reach a settlement that both parties can agree on?" "Liam, the prenuptial agreement is clear," I said firmly. "Derek cheated, and I'm entitled to half of his business. There's no room for negotiation on that." He nodded, acknowledging the strength of my case. "I understand. Derek hasn't made this easy for any of us." I leaned in, looking him straight in the eye. "Liam, I don't want to drag this out any longer than necessary. The sooner we finalize this, the better it is for everyone involved." After our meeting, I felt a renewed sense of determination. I knew Derek was feeling the pressure, and I was ready to see this through to the end. Over the next few weeks, my lawyer and I worked tirelessly to ensure every detail was covered. We left no stone unturned. Derek's attempts to prolong the process were futile. His financial situation was deteriorating rapidly. He had spent a significant amount of money on Jessica, and now, with the prospect of losing half of his business, he was starting to feel the pinch. The house he once boasted about was on the market, and he had moved into a modest condo. One morning, as I was getting ready for work, there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find Derek standing there, looking defeated and weary. I invited him in, not out of kindness, but because I didn't want the neighbors to witness the scene. "Jane, please," he began, his voice breaking. "I know I messed up, but don't take my business. It's all I have left." I looked at him, feeling a mix of pity and satisfaction. "Derek, you put that clause in the prenup yourself. You thought you were untouchable, and now you're facing the consequences of your actions." Tears welled up in his eyes. "I've put my relationship with Jessica on hold. I know it was a mistake. Maybe we can give our marriage another chance." I couldn't help but laugh at the audacity of his proposal. "Derek, there's no going back. You showed your true colors, and I deserve better. This is my chance to start over, and I'm taking it." He continued to plead, but my mind was made up. I escorted him to the door and watched as he walked away, knowing that I had finally taken control of my life. The divorce proceedings continued, and despite Derek's attempts to find a new lawyer, no one was willing to take his case against me. My reputation in the legal community was strong, and no one wanted to go up against me, especially with the clear evidence I had. Eventually, Derek conceded. He agreed to the terms of the prenup, and we finalized the divorce. I was awarded half of his textile company, which was a significant victory for me. I appointed a manager to handle my share of the business, ensuring it continued to thrive. With the divorce behind me, I felt a newfound sense of freedom. I was no longer defined by my marriage or Derek's betrayal. I had reclaimed my self-worth and was ready to build a new future for myself. With the divorce finalized, I began the process of rebuilding my life. The initial relief of being free from Derek's manipulation and deceit was overwhelming. I threw myself into my work, finding solace and satisfaction in the courtroom. My colleagues noticed a change in me. I was more driven, more focused. I wasn't just fighting for my clients. I was fighting for myself. Managing my new share of Derek's textile company was a challenge, but one I embraced wholeheartedly. I appointed Mark, an experienced manager, to oversee the daily operations. Mark was efficient and trustworthy, and I knew he would handle the business well. This allowed me to continue focusing on my law practice while ensuring my new business venture thrived. Every day, I grew more confident in my abilities. I began to see the fruits of my labor, both in my law career and in the textile company. I moved out of my childhood home and bought a beautiful new mansion in the heart of Boston. It was a symbol of my newfound independence and success. One evening, as I was reviewing some documents, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Derek. I hadn't heard from him in weeks, and seeing his name on my screen brought back a flood of emotions. Against my better judgment, I opened the message. "Jane, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need to talk. Please." I stared at the screen, debating whether to respond. Curiosity got the better of me, and I agreed to meet him the next day. We met at a quiet cafe, away from the prying eyes of our former social circle. Derek looked worse than I had ever seen him. The confident, successful man I once knew was now a shadow of his former self. He fidgeted nervously as he spoke. "Jane, I've lost everything. Jessica left me, and I can barely keep up with the bills. I know I hurt you, and I'm so sorry. I'm not asking for sympathy. I just wanted you to know that I realize how much I messed up." I listened, feeling a mix of pity and vindication. "Derek, I appreciate your apology, but it doesn't change what happened. You made your choices, and now you're facing the consequences." He nodded, tears welling up in his eyes. "I know. I was arrogant and foolish. I just wanted you to know that I regret everything." As I left the cafe, I felt a sense of closure. Derek's apology, though late, gave me a sense of finality. I was truly free from his shadow, ready to fully embrace my new life. With my focus back on my career and business, I started taking on more significant cases at work. My success rate soared, and I gained recognition as one of Boston's top lawyers. The textile company also flourished under Mark's management, adding to my financial stability. One day, Mark called me with exciting news. "Jane, our company has secured a major contract with one of the leading fashion brands in New York. This is a game changer for us." I was thrilled. This contract not only meant substantial profits, but also elevated the company's status in the industry. It was a testament to how far I had come since leaving Derek. The news spread quickly, and soon I was receiving invitations to industry events and recognition from various business associations. My life had transformed dramatically, and I couldn't be happier. Reflecting on my journey, I realized that Derek's betrayal had been a catalyst for my empowerment. I had discovered strength and resilience I didn't know I possessed. I had rebuilt my life on my terms, proving to myself and others that I was more than capable. But even with all this success, I knew the journey wasn't over. Life would always present new challenges, but I was ready to face them head-on, armed with the knowledge that I had reclaimed my self-worth and emerged stronger than ever. With my career flourishing and the textile company booming, I felt a sense of fulfillment and peace that I hadn't known in years. I had faced the worst and come out stronger. Yet, life had one more surprise in store for me. One evening, I attended a charity gala in Boston. It was a grand event, filled with influential people from various industries. As I mingled and networked, I met a charming man named Alex. He was an architect, successful yet humble, with a warm and genuine personality. We struck up a conversation, and before I knew it, hours had flown by. Over the next few weeks, Alex and I grew closer. He was kind, supportive, and appreciated me for who I was. For the first time since Derek, I felt a genuine connection with someone. I shared my past with Alex, and he listened without judgment, offering understanding and encouragement. Meanwhile, my professional life continued to soar. The textile company secured another major contract, this time with a renowned designer in Los Angeles. Mark and I celebrated our success, toasting to the future and the incredible journey we had undertaken. One day, I received a call from Liam, Derek's former lawyer. "Jane, I wanted to reach out and let you know that Derek is struggling. He's lost his business and is facing serious financial issues." I paused, feeling a twinge of sadness. Despite everything, Derek had been a significant part of my life. "Thank you for letting me know, Liam," I replied. "I hope he finds a way to move forward." In the midst of all this, Alex surprised me with a weekend getaway to the countryside. It was a much-needed break from my busy schedule. We spent the weekend hiking, talking, and simply enjoying each other's company. It was during this trip that I realized how far I had come, both personally and professionally. On our last evening in the countryside, Alex took me to a beautiful overlook at sunset. As we stood there, taking in the breathtaking view, he turned to me and said, "Jane, you are the most incredible woman I have ever met. Your strength and resilience inspire me every day. I love you." Tears welled up in my eyes as I replied, "I love you too, Alex. Thank you for being there for me and for accepting me as I am." We returned to Boston, our relationship stronger than ever. I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the new chapter in my life. Derek's betrayal had been painful, but it had also led me to discover my true self and find happiness again. One afternoon, as I was working in my office, Mark burst in with a huge smile on his face. "Jane, we did it. Our company has just been awarded Textile Company of the Year by the National Textile Association." I was overjoyed. This recognition was the culmination of all our hard work and perseverance. We gathered the team and celebrated this incredible achievement, toasting to our success and the bright future ahead. Reflecting on my journey, I realized how much I had grown. From the depths of betrayal and deceit, I had risen, reclaiming my self-worth and building a life I was proud of. I had faced Derek's attempts to undermine me, and instead of breaking, I had become stronger. As I stood on the stage, accepting the award for our company, I looked out at the audience and saw Alex, Mark, and my colleagues cheering for me. It was a moment of triumph, a testament to my resilience and determination. In the end, I learned that empowerment comes from within. Despite the challenges and setbacks, I had reclaimed my life and found happiness on my terms. My story was one of strength, resilience, and the unwavering belief that we can rise above betrayal and deceit to build a better future.